easy now, easy now. Think about it some. Don't go off half-cocked. There are reasons. There are explanations. The crew is someplace, and for some reason. And I'm alone. For some reason. Everything looks tilt, but there's logic behind it. There's logic for everything. I just have to keep it cool, that's all.
Hello, and welcome to Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone podcast, kind of. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host, Fred.
Hello.
How you doing this week, Fred?
I'm good. I think we should just stick with third most popular. Well, we'll always be that in spirit.
In our listeners' hearts.
Yes. We'll always be third. It's kind of funny. Just the other day, I found this random book in a church basement. Don't ask me what I was doing there. But it's called 3,500 Good Jokes for Speakers by Gerald F. Lieberman.
What's the publication year of this?
1956.
Okay. Good.
The reason I'm bringing it up now is because whenever we watch like a comedy episode of the Twilight Zone, we're always like, was this funny at the time? I don't know. And I feel like the jokes in this book, like, they say something just about the real humdingers that were flying left and right in the late 50s.
Can you give me a sample? Just one of the best ones?
Well, that would take a while, but here's one off page 294 out of 480. During the war, he gave all his patients local anesthetic. Couldn't get the imported stuff. Can I get a timpani? Or?
Hang on, I got something for you.
Nice. Yeah. Here's another one for you. All men are born free and equal, but some of them get married.
Ring-a-ding.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that didn't go racist, frankly.
Well,
book from 1956. I'm just happy it was Attack a Woman.
The women, marriage, and men section is a bit of a minefield for sure. Thankfully, there isn't like a The Foreigners chapter that I know of. Anyway, that provides a little bit of context. How was your week?
Same old, same old. I did have a little bit of slightly Twilight Zone related stuff. I listened to a good amount of audiobooks and podcasts, and I was just searching around for random new stuff, and I found a podcast I'd never heard of before. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called the Dead Authors Podcast.
No.
The comedian Paul F. Tompkins hosts it, and the premise is he plays H.G. Wells as a time traveler, and he travels around and meets with different authors. And they had one for Rod Serling, which is why I ended up checking it out. And so you have another comedian portraying Rod Serling, and it was interesting. It had some laughs. It's weird. It's kind of like they both read his wiki page, but it felt like they knew a little bit more. They kind of just read his bio and then pretended to do a Q&A, teasing out that bio with jokes here and there. And I don't know. It's worth a listen. It was interesting. If you like comedy in the Twilight Zone, give it a shot. Dead Authors Podcast.
On the off chance.
Yeah.
I discovered a Twilight Zone related thing that I put on the Twitter, which was an audiobook called The Twilight Bone about a psychic dog. So that's another gem for our listeners to check out.
Lots of good stuff out there.
Yeah, exactly. And while you're enjoying this amazing content, let us smoothly transition over to the fact that we're having a pledge drive. It costs us about $200 to host the podcast every year. We're trying to gather donations from listeners to cover the cost, but you don't just give us money willy-nilly without getting something in return. If you donate at any amount, you get a bonus episode, our episode on Time Enough at Last, which we will release later, but you get an exclusive first listen access. And if you give at the $10 level or more...
more is okay.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll give you, what do we have for the listeners, Johnny?
$10 gets you 10 extra minutes of hot cut from the broadcast edition podcast. So, if you want to know our thoughts on stuff that will be wildly out of date by the time you hear this.
I like the concept of $1 a minute.
Oh, if only we had charged that at the front gate.
We would have 0 listeners.
It's true.
Anyway, so head on over to twilightpwn.tumblr.com. That's our webpage, so to speak. And we have a PayPal donation link up at the top there. So check it out. Thanks much. And now let's get down to business. What are we talking about this week, John?
This week we will be discussing King 9 will Will Not Return. This is a second season episode, the 37th of the production run. It aired originally on September 30th, 1960.
This is Africa, 1943. War spits out its violence overhead, and the sandy graveyard swallows it up. Her name is King 9, B-25 medium bomber, 12th Air Force. On a hot, still morning, she took off from Tunisia to bomb the southern tip of Italy. An errant piece of flak tore a hole in a wing tank, and like a wounded bird, this is where she landed. Not to return on this day or any other day.
Wait, he didn't say the Twilight Zone?
No.
Really? Interesting. Because this is the second season. I thought he started saying the Twilight Zone at the end.
It's the first episode of the second season, so maybe he's still kind of tapping his toes into the water. Didn't quite figure it out.
Anyway, we like to write our own Serling-style intros to these episodes. I think you're up first.
Sure. Establishing shot. Vast vista of sandy sand. Aside from the sand, there stands a stranded man. Near the man and the sand is an aeroplan, did crash land with a broken fan. The man's plan? To scan the land and find out what he can over a 25-minute span. Strike the band and cut the flan. It's the Twilight Zone.
Damn. That was a good one. I liked it.
Serling in his intro said, like, her name is the King 9, and I desperately wanted to make the Miss Jackson joke, but had to zig, had to zag when people said zig.
Yeah, 12 times the charm on that one. It did briefly cross my mind just to kind of like have it just be like, her name is King 9. Miss King 9 if you're lasty. The Twilight Zone. Right. I sadly went ahead and wrote a whole long intro, which we're now going to hear. Submitted for your survival, one desolate desert, one confused captain, and one airplane. Her name is King 9, and unlike her more obedient sisters, Kings 1 through 8, she will not return, for she has fallen out of the sky and crash-landed into a conundrum of devastating dimensions. Thankfully, her pilot, one Ethan Embry, will employ his rigorous training and alternate between soliloquy and inner monologue in his brave 20-minute battle against insanity. Will Captain Crazy make it out alive? Is it all just a dream? Yes. Or is it? Again, yes. In the Twilight Zone.
Nice.
Sorry. Now's a great time for the spoiler warning. So these episodes are available for your streaming pleasure on Netflix. You can check them out there. Not Hulu anymore, because apparently Hulu hates you, personally. You can also buy the DVDs and Blu-rays and check it out. And also someone pointed out it's available on Amazon Prime. I'm a bit of, I don't like Amazon. I'm kind of an anti-Amazon bro, so I'm gonna say Netflix over Amazon. But
How do you get any products?
I use TaskRabbit to have people go to stores and buy them. Buy them for me. So check it out before we get going, because we're going to spoil the episode, is what I would be saying if I hadn't already spoiled it in my intro. But let's get going with the plot. We open on a sort of stark image. It's a crashed bomber in a desert landscape. As Serling already said, we're in the thick of World War II in Africa, where I believe the Allies flew like bombing missions into Italy out of like Tunisia, I want to say. And then there was also the African theater as well.
Well, we don't want to get too deep into that. Well, if you and I get going about the North African theater, this podcast is going to be a long thing, so we'll save it for another week.
Yeah, exactly. The camera sort of slowly snakes through the wreckage in a shot that I thought was really cool. It's like we start with the bomber, and then we slowly, I guess, pan or dolly or something.
I feel like I said once, like years ago, about how when I was making my movie and my DP really took me to task for accidentally referring to a tilt as a pan.
Whoa.
He like really made me feel like I was just the dumbest Dumbo on Dumbland. I was like, yeah, could you just, pan that over? He's like, tilt. I was just like, just move it.
Move it, you jackass.
Okay, Roger Deakins.
Yeah. Nice. Deep cut. Yeah, so the camera dolly pan tilts down to the pilot, and he's struggling back to consciousness. His name is Embry, I think, right?
His name is Captain James Embry.
Yeah. I mean, I said Ethan Embry in my intro.
Now, I thought that was you making a veiled hot or not to Ethan Embry, which didn't occur to me at all But then I did a Google image search of him, and I was like, well, maybe Fred sees Ethan Embry. I mean, some of these pictures, I guess, if you look just right,
some of these angles. I don't even know if that qualifies as a joke. It's just that his last name is Embry, and Ethan Embry's in Can't Hardly Wait, which I wanted to...
Yeah. Okay.
Again, that's probably sub-joke, but yeah. Anyway, his name's Embry, and the crash threw him from the plane, but apparently didn't untuck his shirt or muss his hair too much.
Does the physics of that seem even possible? I mean, I know we're going to get deeper into all why things don't quite work, but like, if you get thrown out of a car, things are going to probably not work out very well for you. But I feel like if you get thrown out of a plane, it's going to be even worse.
Yeah, like few and far between are the people who go through the windshield of a plane like that.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, when we get to the end of this episode, it'll sort of retroactively make sense, but I agree it's certainly odd. And I mean, indeed, it's the beginning of a series of odd things.
Maybe it's just like in the era of pre-Ralph Nader automobiles. Right, everyone would just accept, like, oh, okay, he must have just been thrown out of the airplane when it crashed. That's what happens to me whenever I crash.
Clearly, Serling hadn't read Unsafe at Any Speed or whatever it was, Embry begins talking, which is heard... Well, he's not talking.
Well, initially, we get the rare inner monologue.
Yeah, exactly, which is, it's heard as a voiceover. Just as kind of like a philosophy, like, do you think it's better when you hear characters' voices or when they start talking awkwardly out loud? Like, what's the best way to deal with this situation? Because it's weird either way.
I feel like there's some context where inner monologue can be acceptable. The one that leaps to mind is like the detective noir. It's just kind of part of the fabric.
Right.
But in this situation, it's just very obvious that you've got like a guy confused alone, and you kind of have to pick your poison. Like either
pretty much
really seems that good. I feel like if this were made today, like somehow I think the director would just be really brave and like just have no dialogue for 20 minutes, and like you really just have to experience what this guy's going through, and it probably wouldn't work that well either. But
brave but boring. Yeah,
right.
It really is kind of like, you're damned if you monologue, you're damned if you voiceover.
Oh, yeah, I remember now. At least I remember parts of it. Wing tank hit, lost fuel all the way over, fell behind, went off course, and bellied in. And the crew... What about the crew? Hey, did they bail out? Did I order them to bail out? No. No, I didn't. We all wrote it in, all of us. Me. Well, I'm James Embry, captain. Yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah.
I mean, to some degree, again, the twist of this episode justifies that a little bit because he's disoriented, but it's just rarely do I sit there and think, wait a minute, I'm Fred. I'm doing a podcast with my friend. What's his name again? Oh yeah, John. It's just the problem with those kinds of inner monologues is that it's like it's answering the question the audience would have. It doesn't feel like a genuine voice.
Yeah, it's not like organic. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's rare that people really think in monologue that much anyway, and then even if it does happen to come up, it's never so on the nose.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Adaptation?
I saw it in the theaters when it came out, but I haven't seen it since then. I don't really remember.
I think the opening of it is like Nicolas Cage's character having an interior monologue that it kind of reads a little bit more like real people's inner monologue. Like it just jumps from subject to subject.
Yeah.
Like it starts with like he's trying to write the screenplay, and then it ends to like, oh, I want a bagel, but maybe with cream cheese, but like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But rarely is it like, wait a minute, what about the crew?
So streamlined. Right.
So that's the mystery is where's everybody else who was flying this hunk of junk. So Embry starts looking around for his plane homies and can't find anyone. I thought this set was really cool. Like it really feels like a wrecked bomber. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I do know for sure it was an actual bomber that they were able to, I don't know, get on loan. However it works.
It's one of the more like impressive like sets I feel like on the Twilight Zone. It just feels it's evocative and it feels like real. It's clearly not filmed in like a MGM studio somewhere.
Did you have this reaction of I just really like to play on that plane?
Yeah,
did you think
definitely.
If they made like adult playscapes, like a really authentic World War II bomber would be a cool one to play.
I think that's our post Twilight Pwn business idea there.
I think
adult playgrounds. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so Embry's calling out to his plane homies and no one's answering. Did you find it mildly annoying that he kept calling that one guy Jimenez?
It's just kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was annoying. It's just kind of
get the feeling that, like, poor Jimenez was like, yes, my name is Jim Ennis.
Good old Jim Ennis from Burbank, California. That's me.
Exactly. It kind of, like, annoys me on both ends. I feel like I'm a real prick about that because, like, on the one hand, it is like, my mom is, like, the classic example of, like, an extremely white lady who goes to, like, a Mexican restaurant and is like, I would like carne asada. Like, it's just like, Mom, chill out. It's Taco Bell.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, like, especially, sorry to our British listeners, but you go over there and they're just like, yeah, can I get some tortilla chips with naan bread and pasta? And like, there's like not even any.
Taco. How do they say taco? Don't they?
Yeah, they also don't. They don't say like, you know, it's always like Jose. Like they won't even try. So I feel like, I don't know. There's a happy medium, and this guy's not hitting it. But anyway, Jimenez is nowhere to be found. So Embry continues to like play around on this bomber set and continues to think the plot. And then he calls out Mayday into this staticky radio to no avail. Now, here's a little bit of trivia for you. Do you know why people say Mayday when they're asking for help?
Mayday, help me?
You mean like the French, or?
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. It means help me in French, but
the only reason I know that is there's a bit on the British sci-fi show Red Dwarf that I like where they're talking about that. Like the person saying Mayday, he's like, why do they say Mayday? It's just a bank holiday. It's not that big a deal.
And then we'd have to explain what a bank holiday is.
Right.
getting farther.
We're getting deep into the nationalities this week.
Exactly. So Embry goes back outside, puts his hat on, and staggers across a canteen, which apparently belongs to one of his disappeared crew. Which one was it again? It was not Jimenez.
Probably the kid with the weird eyebrows.
Yeah.
Deep Revenant reference for folks out there.
Wait, what?
Did you see the Revenant
yet? I
did,
but there's a kid with weird eyebrows?
The kid with the weird eyebrows who like carves the shape into the canteen that he finds
did
later.
He have weird eyebrows?
Fred, that's the only thing that kid has going for him. You can Google weird eyebrows kid, and it'll bring up that person.
Okay, interesting. Did you
like seriously? I just Googled weird eyebrows kid, and it was the first result.
Okay, hold on, I'm gonna do it. Did you like? Yes. Did you like The Revenant, by the way?
It was exactly what I thought it would be.
Yeah, I really wanted to make a parody of it where it's just like me, like crawling across the floor of my apartment, like stuffing raw chicken into my face, going like. They're not that weird.
But did you Google weird eyebrows kid?
Yeah, fair
so
enough.
Maybe
fair enough. I guess
so. Maybe you're not the judge.
Crowdsourcing has spoken, and I am wrong. So yeah, I don't know. Embry finds a canteen from one of his deceased crew members, so that's a clue that at least they did exist. Did you notice how Embry wears his watch facing in? Did you notice that?
No, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's just a weird little detail that made me like wonder, like, was that like a character thing? But then I Googled it, and apparently pilots and infantrymen would wear their watches facing inwards to like A, avoid like a shiny reflection to give them away, and B, so they didn't have to like, you know,
if you're holding the stick, you can just look down. Yeah,
exactly. So lots of trivia in this one.
Well, that's good little attention to detail. Actually, I believe the actor had served in the Air Force.
Oh, really? Very cool. So Embry takes a swig of water from the canteen, and out of the corner of his eye, he notices one of his crewmen, Blake, kind of in the cockpit of the pilot signaling. Well, he's not really signaling to him.
I didn't actually come up with a joke or anything. Yeah. I was just kind of waiting to throw you the ball and tell me what exactly he was doing up there.
My note is, what do you think the director told the guy playing Blake to do? Because he looks like really like smug or something like that. Like he's very like, I'm up here. Like, how you like me now? Like, it's very weird.
It's not like ominous. It's not scary. Yeah. It's just an odd choice.
It's also like, just to fast forward to the twist, like based on knowing the twist, you'd think he would look like angry or something, or like like condemning Embry, but instead he just looks like he's having fun. Like, it's weird. Anyway, Embry charges towards the cockpit to say, "Hi to Blake," but Blake was only an illusion, and when he gets there, the cockpit is empty. At this point, Embry starts running through a couple of like Twilight Zone plot ideas.
The whole thing could be an hallucination. I could be lying out there in the sand with a fractured skull. Might not even be standing here. Might be dying out there in the desert. All this is when I'm just making up in my mind. Or maybe I'm sleeping and I'm having a dream. Hey, maybe I'll wake up and I'll be back at the base. Or maybe I tied one on and I'm in a booth at a bar someplace with a pretty girl.
I kind of wish just one Twilight Zone episode had ended with that crazy twist. He's like, I was just drunk.
In the Twilight Zone. I would have liked it if he really kept going and he's like, maybe I'm dead. Maybe I'm in hell. Maybe this is a recipe in a cookbook.
Rarely does Serling work his rejected story ideas into a script like that.
Yeah, you got to feel like somewhere Serling had a notebook that had just like characters really drunk, question mark, scratched off. Anyway, Embry wanders up a nearby hill looking for his crew. Well, he kind of does find his crew, but it's a grave, and on the cross is marked Klein. I think that's the canteen guy. And there's some writing on the cross indicating that Klein died during the crash. So that's mysterious. And then at this point, Embry notices some weird aeroplanes going overhead, which are apparently too modern for 1943. But, you know, again, wasn't really clear to me. But apparently they were too modern for 1943. And there's this kind of wacky reveal. He's like, look at those. Oh, those are jets. Wait a minute. I don't know what the word jet is, but those are jets. They don't have jets in 1943, but that's a jet. It's weird. It's like...
Thankfully, I've never had amnesia. But I'm not really sure how amnesia works. Like, you know, it always seems like such a strange... Because it's used in fiction in so many ways. It's so nebulous, like... Okay, I don't remember my name, but I remember how to eat, or I remember how to, like, read, but I don't remember what a jet is, but I do.
Well,
like,
I
don't know. I know it works in the mystery of this kind of, but it reads more goofy than anything.
Well, like, it's not that weird that a character wouldn't remember his own name, but would remember how to eat, because eating is like a very fundamental biological process or whatever.
Sure.
But I think the part that's weird to me is that you could look at a jet, know that it's called a jet, but like not know what a jet is. Like, that's all there is to know about a jet. You know what I mean?
Well, you might not know the word. But
he knows the word. That's the thing.
I know that's why this is very, very strange how it's written.
Yeah. It's also weird how he kind of like teases it out in this inner monologue. The thing is, I like the idea of it, but it's so awkward, like played out as just a character saying it. I think if there was another character and he was like, say, isn't that a jet? And the guy's like, oh yeah, like, you know, but just him peeling apart the mystery by himself, it's weird, you know?
I do wonder, like, if this would work better as just a prose short story where you don't have to deal with the awkwardness of inner monologue or voiceover or whatever.
Totally. Eventually, Embry kind of starts just saying, like, jet, crew, jet, and, you know.
Jets!
I can almost remember. Anyway.
Didn't you actually already use that as an outro one?
I did, yeah. I've used both that and Jet Airliner by Steve Miller Band.
All right, well then leave it on a jet plane.
All right. The gauntlet has been thrown. It's your edit this week.
Right.
Yeah, Embry starts trying to like get the ship going by turning the propeller. You know, he's definitely cracking up a little bit at this point.
It doesn't make any difference. Because you're an illusion. You don't even exist.
Yeah, I mean, that actually went on for a long time, but
no,
I went ahead and trimmed it down.
Yeah.
You get the gist.
Definitely add that one to our like collection of mad science laughter from the Twilight Zone. It'd be funny if just like they inserted like the Mickey Rooney laugh into that clip somehow, but I do think it's a little silly that Soldier would go insane in 20 minutes, but you know, the twist kind of...
Yeah, the limits of the form.
Yeah. Anyway, Embry finally just kind of collapses. I mean, he sees his like, you know, comrades appear, but they're just a mirage, and then at this point he collapses into the sand and starts grabbing it, and that slowly dissolves into another shot, his hand grabbing the sheets of a bed. So we're now in a hospital in the present day, or the present day of 1960, or whenever it was. We see that Embry has kind of essentially been dreaming this whole thing, and he's being attended to by two doctors.
James Embry, age 41, single. Happened this morning. Went by a newsstand, looked at a paper, then went into shock. When the ambulance got there, he was almost catatonic.
Is this what set it off, this front page?
That's why I thought we ought to have a psychiatrist in on it.
It's very odd.
Yeah, I thought so, too, so I checked with the Pentagon in Washington, his Army background. Captain Air Force flew B-25 Africa and Italy, 37 missions, discharged August 1943, recurrent fevers. Some suggestion of a psychological disturbance. But he was discharged before they could find out much about it.
And this was his plane?
His plane and his crew. Took off for Italy on what was supposed to be a routine flight. But Embry never went on that last mission. Boarded in ill and someone else flew the plane for him. Never got back.
And for 17 years, he's been carrying that around in his gut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the newspaper headline was World War II bomber found intact in desert. And son of a bitch, no new petitions against tax. No building codes under fire. I did like the insert shot of the paper, though, because the news about this bomber being found is treated as important as an atomic bomb going off.
Sure.
Like the headline is like 500-point font. Were they just afraid to make the article like an interior article? Would that just not read?
Yeah, it just, I don't know. There's something that's kind of drama killer about check section B under the fold.
Yeah, exactly. I hear you. I do think they went a little bit overboard with it this time, but whatever. I guess then again, if you ever have seen the New York Post, it's like every day the most shocking thing ever happens.
Right.
Did you ever see that New York Post headline? I apologize for this, but that New York Post headline that showed like it was a really cold day. And it showed like a squirrel, like a giant picture of a squirrel, and the headline was "freezing his nuts off."
No, but that is very clever.
Yes, it's brilliant.
Alert the Pulitzer panel.
Yeah, exactly.
The red phone just starts ringing.
The New York Post is very much the Twilight Pwn of newspapers. Yeah, so, we're in the present day. There's a news article about this, missing bomber, and Embry was supposed to be the captain of it, but he wussed out or was sick or something, and his crew crashed, and he's been holding this, guilt in his mind for decades, and, seeing this newspaper article, sent him into this, catatonic state. I guess I didn't like this next beat, because I felt like it would have been cool to, leave it there, but instead he wakes up, and he's just like, oh, I'm all right. You know what I mean? I thought that was a little weird.
Do you mean the specific sand beat or him waking up at all? What bugs you?
I think it would have just been cooler if he'd just been tossing and turning on the bed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we get to the next beat.
Okay.
It's just, I know something, it just relieves the tension too much for him to wake up and be like, oh, I'm fine. It's just kind of okay, so let's all just get on with our lives in the Twilight Zone? Sure. But he does wake up. He seems to be kind of sane-ish. And then the doctors leave the room, and a nurse comes by, and she's got his clothes, including his shoes, and then we get one final twist.
I have a clip of sand pouring out of a shoe.
Damn it,
get my Foley equipment.
There's sand in his shoe, so that's obviously quite shocking.
Apparently, he's at a beach party hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I read that. I don't know.
Then we get Serling's outro.
Enigma buried in the sand. A question mark with broken wings that lies in silent grace as a marker in a desert shrine. Odd how the real consorts with the shadows, how the present fuses with the past. How does it happen? The question is on file in the silent desert. And the answer's waiting for us in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, so the sand at the end. This is maybe just tossing the ball over to you, so do
sure.
with it what you will. But there's something about it that doesn't feel quite right or Twilight Zone-y to me. And I'm curious, am I wrong about that? It just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm trying to figure out why.
I don't know if it doesn't feel Twilight Zone-y. It feels tacky, I guess. It just really muddies the water in a way that...
Sandies the water?
Here's the problem, Fred. I don't like sand. It's rough. No, we've set up this mystery, and what's going on? And then at the end, we get the twist, which it's all been in his head. It's a psychiatric thing. Okay, that's... I guess explains everything, but it's but wait, maybe it was real. But wait, how does that work at all?
Yeah.
It's kind of trying to have its cake and eat its too, but it just creates way, way too many questions. It's trying to say well, maybe we had a nice and neat answer, but maybe it's not so simple. But if it's not so simple, it's much, much more complicated, because how did he read a newspaper and then get transported to Northern Africa and then somehow come back?
Maybe the twist is that he actually did get taken back to the past.
But he wasn't in the past because he saw jets and he saw the like grave site.
Yeah.
So
maybe he did just right. So it did like yeah, great reaction to well, yeah.
That's the reaction they really went for in a lot of your shocking suspense.
Yeah. It's a
Just
good
kind
book.
of resigned acceptance.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, good. I understand. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, something about it, like, I don't know, it just implies this kind of magical force that doesn't feel so Twilight Zone-y to me. Like, have you ever seen the pilot episode, Where Is Everybody?
I don't remember it. I think I have seen it, but it was a long time ago.
Not to give up the goose here, but it has this
and
similar...
I don't believe that was the pilot episode. I believe that's just the first episode.
Yeah, sorry, the first episode. It has a similar thing where a guy's in a crazy set of circumstances and then it's revealed sort of that it was all a dream. And there's no, like, sand at the end, essentially.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, like, there was, like, some complaint.
People were like, where's that sand?
Yeah, that's the twist.
I want that sand.
Yeah. There should be sand here. I'm not... What's going on? I'm really at a loss for words for why I don't like the sand.
I think it just feels like a lot of horror movies where, you know, you vanquish the villain, but you want to have one last scare to go out on a high note. Like, I think that's basically the equivalent of what we're looking at.
Yeah.
You just can't think about it too much. Like,
or it's,
you know, the, like, scare at the end of Carrie, does it make any sense? I don't know. It's cheap, but it works. It's a great scare. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Imagine if, like, at the end of, like, you know, the villain and like, his head gets cut off and, like, dynamite blows up his body. And, like, they cancel his checking account. And, like, at the very end of the movie, somehow he appears and he's like, I'm back. And it's just kind of like,
well, at the end of virtually every, like, Friday the 13th.
Okay, right, exactly. Like that.
I mean, you just have to embrace that kind of stupidity, but that's very common.
Like, you see Freddy's, like, gloved finger make a middle finger as it rises out of the waves, and yes, that is very much something that happens.
That's very close to how one of them ends.
Yes, no, I know, but I just feel like that kind of thing isn't right for the Twilight Zone. I guess that's my point.
Yeah, okay, so that's what I'd say. Where it's like, I get it. It feels a little tacky, just because it's like, oh, we want to have a little bit more mystery, even though it's not really earned, and it just kind of complicates more than. You know,
well, it's funny. It's like I like when Twilight Zone episodes feel kind of open-ended at the end, but this doesn't really leave it like open-ended and vague. It's just like another possible solution that's just like, wait, what? You know what I mean? Like at the end of Shadowplay, it's kind of open-ended. Will this guy ever get out of this loop or whatever? But that's kind of like leaves you with this like ringing question. This is more like this ringing what? Like,
yeah, Shadowplay would be more like. I don't know if at the very end he wakes up and he's in bed and he's like, oh, that was a weird dream.
Yeah,
but then he falls asleep again and it's just like, wait, what happened?
Well, it'd be more like oh, that was a weird dream, and then he looks over to the right and he sees like the judge from the courtroom instead of his wife or whatever. You know.
Right, just like another confusing thing.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, this is another World War II episode, and this one feels so much less personal than something like the Purple Testament. And do you think that has something to do with the fact that, like, you know, Rod served in the Pacific Theater, so like that experience is kind of emotional to him, whereas this is more just like Flyboys in Africa. You know what I mean?
No, I think this is more, and this gets into trivia, but this episode was kind of ripped from the headlines for its day,
much like To Serve Man and
yeah, exactly. No, the episode was based on the discovery of the B-24 Liberator bomber Lady Be Good and her crew's remains in the Libyan desert. I think it was found sometime in like 59 or something.
Yeah,
and it was kind of just a big it made, you know, national news or international news, I guess. So I think maybe you've got it was based on a real story that he wasn't actually involved in, and B, he's kind of just repurposing Where Is Everybody. So it's not an emotional game, it's more of an intellectual. For all the totally. Actor running around cracking up and being kooky, it's really just like the equivalent of like a little mystery puzzle that we're trying to figure out.
Just happens to be set here.
I wouldn't call this a war episode by any stretch. It's set. It has a war setting. But
yeah, no, you're totally right.
This is kind of the issue of us watching them out of order. As I was, as moving along, it's humming towards the ending. I just started getting nervous thinking of The Arrival and just thinking that like he set up a relatively interesting mystery, and I worried that he's just going to fumble it at the end, that it's not going to be that interesting an answer. It's not a great twist ending. I don't think it's as much of a cheat letdown as The Arrival.
We talked about this in The Arrival too, but there's just no way to have It Was All a Dream be a satisfying ending. Or maybe there is, but like it's very hard. Maybe the sand was like a way to be like, well, it wasn't just all a dream. We got the sand here. You know what I mean? But right. I feel like no matter what you do, it just feels a little bit weak sauce.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, The Arrival was worse because it did more interesting things and created more
got
of
your
a
hopes
like.
Up.
Well, it really did. Yeah, I think his intro even said like, tonight we're going to present you with a puzzle, and and he touches the plane and it disappears, and there's all this funky stuff happening, and so it felt really, really let down. When it's like he went nuts because he couldn't solve a plane case, huh? Yeah. Is that something that happens? Yeah. Like this one, it feels like his trying to figure out the puzzle doesn't ask as much of the audience to go along.
Yeah, you don't have to like make as many like jumps, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do agree it's still hard to really get excited about It Was All a Dream. And so I think maybe that's part of the like throwing the sand at the end, but
yeah. Just throw some sand in our eyes to distract us.
What we doing next?
Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Yeah. Scott, Zachary, Mark Grams Jr., Zachary and Grams, and IMDB.
This was the first episode to feature the familiar Marius Constant Twilight Zone theme, the like do 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 do, as opposed to wow.
For more detail, check out our interview with Reba Wisner, which goes into a lot of depth about how the two intro themes were written.
The bomber used was a North American Aviation B-25C-10NA 42-32354, which still exists in storage in California, so that's good. The first episode to feature on-camera Rod Serling narration at the beginning of the episode.
Right,
he'd been just voice for the first season, but they started kind of front and centering him a bit more.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not entirely sure about this, but I think it's because it worked to have him be at the end of the episode in World of His Own.
Right.
Which is the last episode of the first season.
I wonder if there were talks like, and we'll have the protagonist kill you at the end of every episode. It's going to be great, Rod.
Great. Yeah. Rod apparently like really didn't like doing the intros, and it's interesting too because like he was sort of a short man, but because he's always like in an environment that has very little context, no one realized that. So I think it became this weird thing like for the rest of his life of people being surprised by how short he was. And it was not his favorite thing anyway.
Sure. Captain Embry mentions the name of his plane's waist gunner, but his B-25 is an earlier model without a waist gun position. Let me adopt the voice. When the captain names the crew and their assigned tasks, he does not mention a bombardier, a vital crew member on a medium bomber. The shape of the B-25's top gun turret is completely different from the turrets actually used on these bombers. Military personnel stationed in desert climates would not be wearing dark uniforms, but a light khaki tan. Blah! The tail number, blah, 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 blah. People, any kind of military episode is going to get a lot of that.
Yeah. I'd like to meet the one guy who does all of this, because I'm 100% confident it's one person.
What if it's just like the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff? He's just like, just sitting at all these like high-level meetings, like typing away furiously on IMDb.
Yeah, it's Colin Powell, weirdly.
Right. Oh. Do you have any other interesting trivia from Graham's?
I really urge you guys to buy the Graham's book because there's a lot about this episode. A lot of it is interesting. It's hard to condense it into podcastable content. One interesting thing is just that CBS had a lot of like censoring notes for this one. It's pretty like in depth. Like one is, please exercise extreme caution of the quote unquote long animal scream to avoid excessive shock value. Embry's words, "Oh God, dear God, I'm responsible," must be delivered with reverence. Like, there's just so much stuff about, like, like, well, how would you say, like,
really
oh
getting
God,
into the weeds?
Oh dear God, like with reverence. It's not like, oh God, oh my dear God. Like,
you understand that they're gonna go after certain words or something.
Yeah.
But, like when you're getting into the nitty gritty of like, let's hear that line with a little more reverence.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you don't really think of like the censors with like a directorial flair.
Yeah, please insert stage direction.
Right.
Yeah, please make that a tilt instead of a pan.
This line must be said wryly.
It's It's really ridiculous. There's some interesting stuff about how this was Buzz Kulick's like first shot at the big time. He was the one who directed it, which he then squandered on his son Jojo down the line. Lots of stuff about the composition. Serling talking about how he felt uncomfortable on camera, and it was like he had to do multiple takes for this one and many other ones. But mainly, let me just give a ringing endorsement to the Graham's book. It's called Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic. Check it out.
My go-to reference, Twilight Zone Companion by Zickrey, also talks a fair amount just about this being Buzz's first outing, and that he kind of impressed everyone and got called back a bunch because he was a pro.
Yeah.
You know, sordid personal life, but a pro.
Yes, exactly.
We're just getting a state of Buzz Kulick. Robert Cummings played Captain James Embry. This is slightly interesting. In dramatic films, he was billed as Robert Cummings, but when he was in comedic or lighter fare, he was credited as Bob Cummings. I don't know if there's really a modern equivalent of that.
Yeah, Tommy Cruise in Tropic Thunder.
Right.
What about The Rock? Because I feel like in like action goofy movies, he goes by The Rock, whereas like in more serious fare, he goes by Dwayne Johnson. Am I wrong about that?
I don't know if like what is the more serious is like San Andreas is like serious dramatic blow up movie.
Well, you know, he was in I don't know, the latest Woody Allen. No, I have no idea. Yeah. Okay,
I mean that's
wrong.
Interesting point, but I feel like they're probably
that's a different
someone.
thing.
But listeners, if you know of anyone,
Yeah.
send us in. Godson of Orville Wright, who was an old family friend who also taught him how to fly. He piloted most of his life. He was in the Air Force.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
According to an article in Flying magazine, when the government began licensing flight instructors, he received flight instructor certificate number 1.
Whoa.
So
that's cool.
Kind of cool. Yeah. Written by Serling, directed by Buzz Kulick. He did 9 episodes. We still have one more to see, so we'll hold off on a Kulick retrospective. Unfortunately, we have no Mystery Science Theater connection this week, so we will just scoot ahead to the rating. IMDb says this is a 7.0. What do you think, Fred?
That's, pretty smack dab in the middle. I feel about the same. I think I love the set and like the world it creates. Right. And I think it's like a relatively interesting scenario, especially this is like earlier in the series when this basic idea hadn't been used like 20 times. But I think at the end of the day, it feels kind of like unsatisfying to me. And then there's that sand at the end. I also think like the Graham's book goes out of its way to talk about how people love the guy's performance in the episode. And I think he did a fine job, but it's just like a thankless task to like one actor to like drive himself crazy. It's very hard to do. And I'm not sure that like anyone could have done a better job, but I'm not sure that I like loved his performance. So it's kind of like in the 5 zone for me. Like, there's definitely stuff to like, but there's enough to not like to keep it in that realm.
I read some trivia that he recorded all of his voiceover dialogue beforehand in a studio, and then they actually would play it for him while performing out on, out in the desert. So still, it's very weird having to play that way. I basically have the exact same thoughts. I'm sorry, we're not going to have a very interesting discussion on this part, but I hadn't even really thought about what I'd give it for a rating, but like 5 sounds absolutely right. I think I have seen this episode before, and I had completely forgotten about it. I'm sure in about
of a 5.
In another year, I'll completely forget about it. The actor has some good spots when he goes crazy, maybe some not so great spots. The setting and the jet are very cool.
The jet's
the
cool.
The mystery is like nice at the beginning, but it's not satisfying
developed,
when it's resolved. So it's just all like, this isn't a bad episode, but it's not a great episode. It's just kind of right down the line of that happened. I think if we could just get that quote from you earlier of like, okay, yeah, this is an episode. It exists.
Cool.
Sure.
All right.
5s.
Well, that wraps it up. Double 5s for King 9 will not return. We, however, will return next week. Like that one, Johnny? With an episode.
That was great.
Yeah, that was great. That we'll let you know about on our social media. Yeah. How can people get in touch with us?
People can send us an email at twilightpwn, pwn@gmail.com. You could reach out to us on Twitter at twilightpwn. You can check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com. Like us on Facebook. Listen to us on any kind of podcatcher app. And you could subscribe to us in iTunes if you're over there. If you'd leave us a rating or review, we really appreciate those. We just got one from Podcast Obsessed, which somehow I think Podcast Obsessed has given us a rating or review in the past, but
Thanks again.
Chicago politics, he's stuffing the ballot box, so thank you very much.
Or she. Gosh.
He or she.
I don't know.
If you had your choice to play on a bomber,
good question. Here we go.
Or a submarine,
or
a tank, let's represent the main branches of the military, which would you most want to play on?
I think I would probably submarine. There's something kind of cool about a submarine, just like a weird little, I don't know, submarines are cool. I'd say submarine. How about you?
Well, I get your instinct for submarine.
Mm-hmm.
There is a submarine docked in Pittsburgh at the Science Center. I tried to go in it. My kiddo didn't really like it. And I will say I think I have a touch of claustrophobia, so I don't know how much I'd really love it. They are really, at least this one, it's pretty compact. So I'm gonna go fighter jet or bomber. I think that's where I'd want to play.
Definitely, there's a lot of potential for sitting.
There's no wrong answer here.
There's a lot of potential for sitting in the cockpit and going pew 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 like that. Definitely,
yes, exactly.
That's the best for that one. All right. Well, we'll think about this some more and revisit the question next week.
All right.
I'll talk to you then.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm leaving on a jet plane, don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go. I'm leaving on a jet plane, don't know when I'll...
But he wasn't in the past because he saw jets and he saw the grave site.
Yeah.
So
maybe he did just right. So it did
on a jet plane, don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, baby.